We are going to talk about the 2025 Acknowledgement and Confirmation of Disclosures and how to fill out these forms correctly. So at the top of the form, you're going to see a spot for the address. We need to make sure that that's filled out so we know what property this form attaches to. The first thing that you need to pay attention to is in the first sentence where it says, "It is hereby confirmed that prior to entering into a contract, the following items have been disclosed and or delivered." So this form needs to be signed prior to the contract form. The first part is the buyer acknowledges and confirms that the broker providing brokerage services to the buyer has described and disclosed their duties and responsibilities to the buyer. This is the second page that you're going to sign. The first page is going to be that disclosure of brokerage services, and this is acknowledging that they've received that. If there are any two Epic agents involved, it is an in-house transaction. So even if it's somebody that's involved, that's part of a different MLS than you're part of, if they are with Epic and you are with Epic, Katie is their broker. And by definition, that means that it's an in-house transaction. So anytime you have a deal going with another Epic agent, make sure that you check the box that says that it's a in-house transaction. The next part is that the buyer acknowledges receipt of the residential property condition disclosure or disclaimer form. There is almost never a reason to use the disclaimer, so the majority of the time you're going to receive either the residential property condition disclosure statement, which is the top box, or at the very bottom, it'll say that disclosure is not required under the Residential Property Condition Disclosure Act. So that's going to apply for vacant land, commercial properties, things like that. There is another option, which is the exemption form, and there's 9 exemptions that are listed on that form. So if the property falls into one of those 9 criteria, then you will have the exemption form instead. The next part is the buyer acknowledges the lead-based paint disclosure, and this is going to be if the property was constructed prior to 1978, there's going to be a lead-based paint disclosure form, and we also need to let them know that there is a copy of the lead-based paint pamphlet titled "Protect Your Family from Lead-Based Paint in Your Home" that is available online, or if the property is constructed in 1978 or after, then it is exempt from that disclosure and they don't have to do it. The final thing that the buyer is acknowledging by signing this form is that they've received an estimate of the costs associated with this transaction and that you have made them aware that there's a contract guide available at OREC that they can refer back to if they have any questions at all regarding what the contract is obligating them to. So again, remember, all of these things are done prior to signing this form. So prior to making the offer, they need to have received the estimated costs that are involved with this transaction, not just a generic estimated cost with any transaction. Also, they've received the disclosure of broker services and then any of the disclosures that go along with this property. Now, the seller's piece, this is just that the seller acknowledges and confirms that the broker providing broker services to the seller has described and disclosed their duties. So again, the disclosure of brokerage services needs to be signed prior to signing or accepting a contract. Again, if there's 2 Epic agents involved, it is an in-house transaction, so you'll need to check that box. And then further, the seller is also stating that they've received an estimated cost associated with this transaction. So the cost sheet that we did at listing isn't sufficient because there may be different costs involved with this offer. Taxes may have changed since the time we listed the property, so there needs to be a specific cost estimate done for this particular offer that the seller's accepting. Now, a couple other caveats. If the buyer is unrepresented, you're going to still have them sign this form, but they're going to strike that they acknowledge they're receiving any type of brokerage services. So strike that and have them initial it. It's still okay that they acknowledge that they've received the residential property condition disclosure. Also, it's okay that they've received the lead-based paint, but you are going to have them strike that they are acknowledging receiving estimate of costs, because we are not providing that. We're not providing the contract guide or any other brokerage services to them. So they initial that that has been struck from the form, and then they sign that they did receive the disclosures. If the seller is the one that's unrepresented, again, we're going to have them strike that they're receiving services, strike that they're receiving an estimated cost sheet, strike that they're receiving the contract guide, initial where it's been struck, and then have them sign. And sometimes you can actually flip the script on them, and when they realize that they're giving up all of those services, sometimes they'll come back and try to negotiate, well, for a lower percentage, will you help me with this? So, signing this form can sometimes get you a paycheck. But that is the 2025 Acknowledgement and Confirmation of Disclosure form.